Morning, everybody. I'm Pat Sadak, and I'm a constable with the Winnipeg Police Service Public Information Office, and I want to welcome everybody to the 2024 Winnipeg Police Service Annual Stats Report. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the home and tradition lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Ininu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. I'd like now to introduce Winnipeg Police Service Chief Bowers, Deputy Chief of Support Services Art Standard, Deputy Chief of Operations Scott Halley, and Deputy Chief of Investigation Cam McKidd, and Data Analyst David Bowman. I'll now invite David to the podium to provide you with a technical briefing of the report. David?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Bowman, a data analyst in the Organizational Development and Support Division here at WPS. As part of this division, I help support data-driven decision-making across the service. Today's presentation of the 2024 statistical report is a reflection of that work, turning data into insights and insights into strategy that support public safety in our city. While these stats provide valuable insight into trends within our community, it's important to remember that numbers alone don't tell the whole story. These findings must be understood within the broader community context and the strategies we employ as a police service. It's also important to acknowledge that a comprehensive report such as this is a collective effort across the organization. From our call center staff to our frontline police officers to our records division and our analytics team. This work reflects the importance we place on evidence-based policing and accountability across the service. Last year marked a significant shift from a static magazine-style report to a dynamic web-based format. This year, we're building on that momentum with an enhanced online experience, including refreshed crime and calls for service maps, both of which have been optimized for mobile and desktop use, all of which can be found on winnipegpolice.ca. To start, I'll outline the main findings from this year's data, each of which will be explored in more detail in the slides ahead. Most notably, in 2024, total crime volume in the city decreased for the second year in a row with a sharper decline in crime severity. Violent crime volume decreased for the first time in 4 years, along with the first meaningful decrease in severity in over a decade. Property crime decreased for the second year in a row, though shoplifting continued to trend upwards. Youth crime remained stable, with violent youth crime falling for the first time since 2020. West District saw the largest increase among our policing districts, while Central District, including both the downtown and Portage Avenue zones, saw the largest decreases. Clearance rates improved for the second consecutive year, and calls for service improved for over the 5-year average, while our dispatched events plateaued. I'll look first at our calls for service. In 2024, our communications center received over 770,000 calls for service, averaging more than 2,000 calls each day. This represents a 13% increase over the 5-year average, underscoring continued upward pressure on frontline and communications resources. While total calls continue to rise, the number of events that we're able to dispatch officers to has plateaued. In 2024, dispatched events decreased slightly over the previous year, but remain largely unchanged from the 5-year average. When we see increasing demand alongside a flat dispatch capacity, this signals that service demand is outpacing available resources. Looking at emergency events, these are high-priority, resource-intensive calls, often requiring 2 to 4 times as many responding units as urgent and non-urgent calls, placing added strain on frontline resources. Emergency events are relatively unchanged from the previous year, but are 7% higher than the 5-year average. Looking now at where these calls are coming from, citizen-generated events continued to trend upwards in 2024, increasing by about 1% over 2023. Check Well-Being remained the top citizen-generated event for the 5th year in a row, followed by domestic events, disturbances, suspicious persons, and family troubles. This pattern speaks to a broad range of issues, many non-criminal in nature, that community members rely on police to respond to. Police-initiated events saw an overall decrease from the previous year. That said, we observed increases in several proactive categories, including traffic stops up 2%, beat patrol up 20%, and hotspots policing up 17%. The overall decline in police-initiated events is primarily attributed to a recent process change in how school engagement events are captured. This is a shift in classification, not officer activity. Outside of emergency calls to 911 and our non-emergency line at 986-6222, Winnipeggers also have the option to report a range of crimes online through our website. These online submissions provide another avenue for the public to engage with police and contribute to community safety. In 2024, WPS received nearly over 40,000 crime reports online. Nearly half of all crimes were reported online in 2024, including a majority of property crimes. The most common types of crimes reported online include mischief, theft, shoplifting, fraud, and break-and-enter. Before diving into the crime data, I'd like to briefly explain how we count and categorize the crime stats presented in this report. These figures reflect crimes reported to police. We don't incorporate other data collection methods, such as community safety surveys or self-reported victimization surveys in this particular report. Our crime counting methodology follows the standards set out by Statistics Canada through the Uniform Crime Reporting Survey. This ensures consistency and comparability over time and across jurisdictions. Looking first at crime volume. As noted at the outset, in 2024, total crime volume in the City of Winnipeg decreased for the second consecutive year, down about 1% from 2023. This overall decline was driven by larger reductions in both violent crimes, down 1.4%, and property crimes, down 2.3%. Most notably in 2024, violent crime in Winnipeg decreased for the first time in 4 years, with declines observed across several major categories, including assaults, robberies, sexual assaults, and homicides. Property crime also continued its downward trend for the second year in a row, falling below pre-pandemic levels observed in 2019. Alternatively, traffic crimes increased by about 14%, with a 31% jump in impaired driving offences, reflecting increased detection through targeted enforcement initiatives and check stops. These results align with the WPS traffic safety strategy, which promotes responsible driving through enforcement and education, with a particular focus on impaired driving, speeding, and distracted driving. Other crimes increased by about 12%, primarily driven by a larger increase in bail and probation violations. The rise in bail and probation violations reflects a deliberate focus on accountability and disruption of violent recidivism, not increased offending in other crime type areas. This work is directly supported by targeted enforcement initiatives, including Project Surge and the Manitoba Integrated Violent Offender Apprehension Unit. Turning now to crime severity. In addition to the overall decline in crime volume, total crime severity decreased more significantly in 2024, down about 5% compared to 2023, with similar reductions observed in both violent and non-violent severity. The Crime Severity Index, or CSI, gives a clearer sense of a crime's overall impact by factoring in both how many crimes occurred as well as how serious they are. It also adjusts for population changes, making it easier to compare crime trends over time and across jurisdictions. Looking at the long-term trends for crime severity in Winnipeg, violent crime severity in Winnipeg peaked in 2009 and again in 2023. With the exception of a temporary drop during the early pandemic in 2020, 2024 marks the first meaningful decrease in violent crime severity in over a decade. Looking at our preliminary numbers from the first quarter of 2025, I'm happy to report that both overall crime volume and severity have continued the downward trend we saw last year. While a busy summer lies ahead, these early trends are encouraging. Looking now at where crimes are occurring in our city. Among the 4 policing districts, West District experienced the largest increases in total crime last year. Meanwhile, Central District, including both the downtown and Portage Avenue zones, experienced the largest decreases. So within that Central District, the downtown zone experienced a 9% decrease in total crime over the previous year, while the smaller Portage Avenue zone saw a sharper decline, down 13% compared to 2023. These changes occurred within priority areas identified within the downtown safety strategy, which focuses on enhancing safety through visible police presence and collaborative partnerships with community stakeholders. Mirroring the citywide figures, crime in downtown has continued to decline in early 2025. As noted previously, both the volume and severity of violent crime decreased for the first time in 4 years, driven by reductions across major categories including assaults, robberies, sexual assaults, and homicides. In 2024, 18% of violent crimes cleared by charge involved an accused who was violating their bail, probation, or other court-ordered condition. This marks a slight decrease from 2023 and the lowest proportion recorded in recent years, down from a peak of about 21% in 2020. Violent crimes involving a weapon decreased nearly 10%, including a 14% reduction in knife-related offenses and a continued decline in bear spray incidents, now at half the level reported in 2022. These trends align with changes to provincial legislation that restrict the sale of bear spray and certain knives, helping to reduce the availability of these weapons in our community. Finally, assaults against peace officers reached a recent historic high, increasing for the 3rd year in a row, averaging over 1 assault each day. Turning now to property crimes. The majority of property crime categories experienced year-over-year decreases. Notable decreases include motor vehicle thefts down 7%, break and enter down 4%, theft from motor vehicle down 15%. Not shown here, fraud was down 8%, and arson to property was down 18%. The notable exception to the overall decrease in property crime is shoplifting, up 41% over 2023, and now exceeding pre-pandemic levels, where shoplifting was most characterized by liquor store thefts. In 2024, we see that trend more ubiquitous throughout the city, moving its way across the retail sector. While shoplifting continues to reach historic levels, the proportion of these incidents escalating into violence is moderating. Commercial robberies plateaued in 2024, with incidents involving knives down 24% from last year and incidents involving youth down 26%. So looking into 2025, while shoplifting remains above the 5-year average, the upward trend has leveled off considerably early this year, aligning with targeted enforcement efforts and strengthened partnerships with the retail sector. Looking at youth crimes. In 2024, youth crime was 5% higher than the previous year, though this increase was driven primarily by increases in bail and probation enforcement. When breaches are excluded, overall youth crime was nearly identical to the previous year. Some key trends within the youth crime categories include violent youth crime decreasing for the first time in 4 years, and following 2 years of sharp increases, youth crimes involving a weapon decreased by 23% in 2024. Despite this improvement, youth are still overrepresented in weapons-related offenses. In 2024, traffic-related crimes increased by about 14% compared to the previous year, driven by a 31% increase in impaired driving offenses, reflecting enhanced detection and targeted enforcement efforts. Looking at our HTA officer-enforced violations, those were similar to the previous year but above the 5-year average, including increases in speeding as well as photo enforcement. Hate-motivated incidents can relate to a wide range of crime types, including mischief, uttering threats, assault, and harassment. When an incident is suspected of being hate-motivated, it's assigned for review by our hate crimes coordinator in the Major Crimes Unit. Coordinators assess based on a number of criteria set out in the UCR, and this determination may become a factor in sentencing. There were 44 hate crimes reported to the Winnipeg Police Service in 2024, of which the majority were mischief that targeted the Jewish community. Turning now to cybercrimes. Since 2018, the number of cybercrimes reported to WPS has more than tripled, reflecting both increased digital activity and greater public awareness. In 2024, the majority of cybercrimes were fraud-related, followed by child pornography and extortion. While child pornography cases are self-explanatory, the vast majority of extortion incidents involved sextortion, a growing online threat whereby victims are lured into sharing an intimate image of themselves online, then extorted for money with the threat of sharing that image publicly. This crime can have devastating consequences for victims, family, and the community. Women are disproportionately represented as victims of online sexual offenses, while men are more frequently targeted in cases of online extortion. Among violent cybercrimes, including extortion, uttering threats, and sexual offenses, the median victim age was 20 years old, with the most frequently reported victim age being just 15 years old, underscoring the vulnerability of youth in online spaces. Finally, total crime clearance increased for the second year in a row, driven by a large increase in property clearance. Of the 41 homicides in 2024, over 90% were cleared. It's worth noting that homicide clearance rates in Winnipeg have remained above 80% since 2011. Winnipeg has consistently maintained a homicide clearance rate well above the national average, which is truly a testament to the skill, dedication, and persistence of our investigators in resolving the city's most violent crimes. So, to reiterate, total crime volume in Winnipeg decreased for the second year in a row, with a sharper decrease observed in crime severity. Violent crime volume decreased for the first time in 4 years, along with the first meaningful decrease in severity in over a decade. Property crime decreased for the second year in a row, though shoplifting continued to trend upwards. Youth crime remained stable, with violent youth crime falling for the first time in 2020. The West District saw the largest increases in total crime, while Central District, including both the downtown and Portage Avenue zones, saw the largest decreases. Clearance rates improved for the second year in a row, and calls for service continued to increase, while the dispatched events have plateaued. That concludes my presentation. At this point, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have, along with the chiefs and deputy chiefs.
Can you just explain the difference between the violent crime severity index and the total violent crime numbers? How did those go down? What's the difference there?
Sure. Our total violent crime volume reflects a simple count of the number of violent crimes that took place in the city. The crime severity index takes more into consideration. It takes into account not only the counts of crime, but the types of crimes as well and their relative severity. So in the crime severity index, each crime is assigned a weight based on average sentence lengths handed down by the criminal courts. Crime severity also controls for population growth. So that's part of that formulation. So really, in my view, it's a better way to measure the impact of crime within a city, because comparing, just raw numbers from 2024 to 2004 in the city of Winnipeg isn't a fair comparison, because some of that volume is going to be driven by simply by population growth alone. The severity index also allows better comparisons across jurisdictions, allowing for apples-to-apples comparisons with other cities in Canada.
What factored into that decrease? The violent crime severity index?
Yeah, so we saw a significant decrease across nearly all major violent crime categories. Robberies, assaults, homicides factor significantly into that violent crime severity index weighting system. So decreases across those major categories were the main contributors.
Some people might be surprised to see crime in the Central District, like downtown, went down. Can you explain why that is?
This might be an opportunity for one of our deputies or chief of police to speak to that.
Yeah, maybe I'll just step in here for a second. So, good morning. I think it's still the morning, right? So I just want to make a statement here that the Winnipeg Police Service is committed to making our city safer for all of our citizens. This is our number one priority, and we don't accept being the most violent city in Canada. And I would like to acknowledge the commitment of our members and the work they are doing to ensure our city is safer. So to get to your question about what's sort of leading down to the reduction in the downtown area. So we've been in collaboration with the province, the city, the community, agencies like DCSP, our community safety team, justice and Indigenous leaders and organizations, and we're all working together to reduce crime in our city, and especially in our downtown. You've seen an increase of 36 foot patrol officers. The last 12 will be coming in the spring or in the summer. And our downtown safety strategy, and that downtown safety strategy, it's with everybody working together and knowing what each agency does and what their responsibilities are, and to ensure that we've kind of got a blanket across downtown. It may not be a police officer, say at the concert hall, kind of having eyes on the parking lot or the people going in, but they know who to call depending on what the situation is, and their eyes and ears for everybody, and vice versa. We don't always have to handle certain issues in the downtown, but we know who to bring in. So this is really working well, and this is what we're going to build on moving forward. So I think big thing is collaboration. Another thing is the Manitoba Integrated Violent Offender Apprehension Unit. They have 692 arrests since they started, and those are our most violent offenders. I think 16%, we've arrested 16% of the people that unit has arrested and rearrested them. So we're concentrating on those most violent offenders and those most violent crimes. So when they're in custody, people aren't committing violent crimes. So I think that's been a big one. The Retail Theft Initiative, Project Surge for the youth especially, getting those wraparound services for the youth so there aren't out recommitting offenses. That was an excellent example of a really good project. So those are just some of the things that we've done and we're going to continue to build on. So if I had sort of had a message here, it's we're going to be very collaborative moving forward with our partners. So by no means is this like a victory, but it's trending in the right direction. And to use the line from the Jets, we believe that our collaboration and our efforts will continue to improve the safety in our city. So I hope that sort of sums that up.
Yeah. So this, to summarize, a combination of enforcement and maybe other organizations responding to non-criminal events like the downtown community safety patrol that could prevent other.
Correct, yeah. It's like a blanket of safety, right? So we're all, what the big thing is here, we're all working together, and we all know we're say on an evening of the Jets is an easy one, but maybe it's the Burton Cummings Theater or something like that. We know what's going on in the city, and we'll make sure our resources are spread out so that we have a good coverage. And then we collaborate and talk to each other about what's going on.
What other, just so you're doing the job.
Yeah.
So what other planks, I guess, are part of your strategy moving forward to prevent, suppress crime?
There's a number of things. We're currently doing an organizational or operational review to see how we can get, again, our members more connected to the community. I think that's huge, and I think especially in the Retail Theft Initiative, we saw our members connecting with the community and the businesses, and it was very positive for our members, but obviously very positive for the businesses and community. So it's realigning our resources so that our members have time to make those connections in the community. So that's something that is on the top of the list here moving forward.
So when you see this report, I mean, where do you see more resources needed and in what areas can police respond to better to prevent more crime or bring numbers down in areas where they're at?
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I want to get. I talked about early, I think, when I took this job, to get our members back with the community. So when we talk about that, I'm talking about the station duties in the districts are closed, so I want to get those open again so we can have the community come to the office and meet police in their area. And the police in that area will understand better about what's going on. And also our back offices, our detective offices, to get them back in the district so they have a knowledge of what's actually going on in those areas, and then they can address it. And then they can bring other units in, community support units or guns and gangs or whatever those issues are in a more coordinated way.
Is there any way to explain the significant increase in crime in the West District?
Definitely a big population growth there. That area has grown. So I would contribute that to the most of that. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add to that from the executive, but there is a large increase in that area.
And for shoplifting, reports are up by quite a bit. Do you think, is it a situation where shoplifting is happening more, or is it being reported more? I know it tends to be a vastly underreported crime. Or is it also because of the increased enforcement that basically there's more officers out there doing this work, and that's leading to more arrests?
I think Cam might be able to give you a better explanation of that.
I put this on here, it's going to fall. Morning, everybody. Yeah, with respect to shoplifting, I can tell you the impact of the Violent Crime Retail Theft Initiative and the Safe Shop Initiative last year was really impressive, and it was well received by police and by the community, by retailers, by the public. I'll just give you some quick numbers just to sort of set the stage there. In 2024, in the space of 7 months, we had 981 arrests with respect to those two initiatives. So quite often people will hear arrests, and it is a short-term solution, but I can tell you when we make those arrests, the follow-up to that is we do have conditions on people. We identify people who are chronic or prolific or repeat offenders, and we get conditions on them so we can monitor them after the fact. So yes, the arrest can be a short-term solution, but with that number of arrests, it enabled us to really get a better picture of what's going on and who's committing these crimes. And so your question was going forward. Can you just repeat it again?
I guess it shows a sharp increase. So,
Yes.
Is that because of just greater enforcement, or
Yes.
is it due to basically shoplifting become more common?
No, exactly. So that number went up, and we expected it to go up. When we put that amount of resources into these areas, there were some areas, for instance, in Osborne Village, there was some retailers, some businesses in that area that weren't even reporting. So we didn't want to see that. We were data-driven to an extent. So it's important that we know where crime is being committed. So not only did we flood those areas with resources and do covert enforcement, we also did an educational piece to it. So we were speaking to the retailers, letting them know, here's what we need to see in your reports. We need you to make reports. Here's how to make them. You make them online, and we were walking them through that process. So with the increased enforcement and the increased education, we expected to see a spike, and we did. The hope is that you'll see that spike, and then when those resources are scaled back, you'll see that trend down, because we've had an impact, and the loss prevention officers now are on better, this constant communication between the LPOs and our members that do that sort of work. So the legacy, I guess, if I were to use that word, of the Violent Crime Retail Theft Initiative is these partnerships have been made, and these lines of communication are wide open. I was at a meeting last week with the Retail Theft Council. There was, I think, 25 people there. Security professionals, the Minister of Justice was there, businesses were represented, and law enforcement, of course. Constantly looking for ways to do things better. So I think that's the legacy of what we did in 2024. Going forward, those relationships aren't going anywhere. In fact, I think they're growing. We're seeing more buy-in, and we're looking for ways now. We've seen what police can do with those kind of resources, but that's not always going to be available to us. It's a tax on the service. It's very expensive. So the question is going forward, once we withdraw that sort of attention, what's going to happen? I think what you're going to see is hopefully a continuation of those relationships. And now we're looking more, we've seen what police can do with education and with enforcement. Now we're also looking to see what the retail industry can do as well. By leveraging, as the chief referenced, there's another layer of groups available to assist with this. If it's business disruption, there's avenues now that I think we're trying to connect the dots here and not have everything be a police response. And the retailers had some fantastic ideas themselves for better protecting their employees and their customers.
Just to clarify that, when we speak to government, we're often told that the retail theft initiative is permanent. So what's the status or what's the future of it? What will it look like?
I think there's funding. I think the initiatives, we kind of don't want to set dates, I think, anymore. Like, we're doing this initiative between this date, and it's going to look like this. I think there's going to be as I said, there's certainly legacy to it, and a lot of the things that we did under these initiatives are continuing with our resources that are on-duty resources, our property crime unit, our CSUs. If we look at the work that was done in West District, Inspector Max Waddell out there has done a fantastic job. So a lot of the legacy from the Violent Crime Retail Theft Initiative is continuing. I don't want to speak for the province, but there's typically funding there if there's a need. We've seen that over the past, over 2024. So yeah, there's not a specific, I wouldn't say there's a specific retail theft initiative that's ongoing, but we're still doing that work every single day with our on-duty resources, and I'm sure it would be supplemented if we see the need arise again.
Similar question, but for impaired driving, do you think it's just more enforcement there? I know you mentioned the 2% increase in traffic stops, or is it actually that just more people are getting intoxicated?
Good question. I'll refer that to Deputy Chief Halley.
Well, thank you very much for asking a question I'm able to answer here. And you actually answered it yourself. The increase, excuse me, in impaired driving is directly related to enforced initiatives, enhanced enforced initiatives that we are undertaking with our partners at MPI, and it has resulted in an increase in our arrests, specifically when it comes to drug impairment and our Don't Drive High initiative.
Can you talk about the role that cannabis is playing?
Speaking on a personal level, I was actually shocked at the numbers. Just under 50% of the drivers that we did tested were testing positive for cannabis in their system. So that was a shocking result for us, and has led to an increased determination that we're going to continue to do enforcement, because we don't need people who have consumed drugs, cannabis in their systems, who are out there on our highways and our roadways.
Is there an answer to entering helping you guys to identify these drivers?
Well, when we do stop them, we do have a testing kit that we will use to determine if there's a presence of cannabis within their system, and then that leads to the next step in the process.
This is a little bit of a different question, but just with the increase in domestic violence that we saw, wondering if the investments are on hold
Is that a David question?
Sure. So I guess just want to distinguish between domestic violence in terms of a criminal code aspect versus domestic calls for service. So we have seen domestic calls for service fairly consistent over the past few years. Of those calls, usually about 14 or 15% of those result in criminal charges. So it is the minority of those call types that do result in criminal charges. So I don't have those numbers specifically in front of me, but I know it's about 14 or 15% of the total domestic calls for service that result in criminal charges.
When it comes to just like characterizing something as a crime for all the different categories, does the charge have to be laid, or is it, how do you determine whether it's a crime?
Just whether or not a crime has taken place. So there's not always a suspect necessarily identified at that point. That's when a crime becomes cleared, for example. But yeah, whether a victim chooses to proceed or not, whether a suspect's been identified or not, those are not factors in terms of whether we count it as a crime. If our investigators determine that a crime has taken place, then it makes its way into this report.
I don't know, David, you went through the stats, but I don't know if anyone can touch on just the increase in sextortion and cyber crimes, and how police can deal with that. It's a complicated investigation.
Sure.
Yeah, just briefly, I guess, on the sextortion. When we got David's presentation as an executive, I think we were very surprised, to be honest, at the level of, I guess the age really shocked us, the 15-year-old being the highest, 15-year-old male being the highest category of victimization. It's something that surprised us, the level to which that's going on in our community. It is difficult to police. And the best way to police that, to be honest, is through public messaging. Venues like this, through parents, through caregivers, making their kids aware that this is a real serious issue. It can be just absolutely devastating. It should be discussed in the schools. If anyone in the media would like to do a follow-up story, we'd be more than happy if you'd be willing to cast a light on it and draw some attention to it. It's something that's difficult to talk about, but yeah, it's a huge impact on these kids that are being lured into these circumstances. That's right. I can't remember. There's two parts to that, wasn't there?
Yeah, yeah, I think you answered it, but I'm just wondering in terms of like the perpetrators, how difficult is it to identify who's actually committing these crimes?
Yeah, very difficult. Very difficult. A lot of them are not local. We've had some success, but yeah, I wouldn't want to profess that we're batting 100% on that. We're not. A lot of these offenders are overseas. They're using different technology to conceal their identities online. Very difficult to police. Yeah.
What is the level of awareness among parents? Do you find that a lot of parents just don't know the dangers?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think, as evidenced by my first comment, we were surprised as police executives when we heard the numbers. So I don't think it's commonly known amongst parents. I'd be surprised if it was. It wasn't well known. We knew it was an issue, but not to the extent that it is. So I think there's some education that needs to be done because it is difficult to enforce.
Is it thought to be a fairly underreported type of crime?
Absolutely, yes.
Sorry to bounce all over the place, but with property crimes being up, do you think that's just fewer homeowners reporting it? Just discouraged?
Yeah, I think across the board, our property crime was down by and large. The only thing that was up significantly was the shoplifting category, and Dave might correct me on that, but okay. Yeah, so pretty much down across the board on property crime, but shoplifting was significantly elevated for the reasons I discussed earlier.
Sorry, I meant, do you think it's down because people are discouraged from reporting it? Not as frequently as other neighborhoods?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Certainly possible. We can't form opinions based on things we don't know about. So if people aren't reporting it, it's not really quantified, so it's hard for us to comment on it, to be honest. We recognize that there are people that have had enough, and if their car gets broken into, they don't want to go through the time and effort to report it. Having said that, we're constantly messaging the importance of reporting those. It's a quick online report, and it allows us to collect the data so we can see where crime is being committed. So we are data-driven, and that, to take a few minutes to make a report, it does help us, designate our resources to where the problems are. So we're always strongly encouraging people to take that time to report, even if it's online.
We often ask about root causes of crime. What are some of the more common, I guess you could say, root causes or contributors to offending when it comes to mainly violent crime or property crime?
It's a difficult one. It's a pretty broad question. With respect to property crime, we see a lot of it as being a crime of opportunity. We don't see, to be honest, a lot of shoplifting or property crime to feed a family, that sort of thing. I know that's a narrative that we do hear. If I'm being honest, if we come across a situation like that, we welcome that as police officers because we know there's people that can help those people. And I can almost guarantee we'll find an off-ramp for those people if that's their situation. because a lot of off-ramps exist in Winnipeg today to help people that are in need like that. With property crimes, specifically shoplifting, more often than not, it's a crime of opportunity. People do a risk-reward calculation, and they don't feel there's, they make that calculation and they elect to steal sometimes. So that's what we see most of the time when we're arresting people. Violent crime? It's a tough one. We've certainly got a drug problem in the city. We're tackling it on many different fronts. It would take me, I know Kelly said a couple minutes, so it would take me a half an hour to go through what we're doing on that front, but yeah, absolutely. Violent crime kind of goes hand in hand with drugs a lot of the time. We've got the fentanyl issues, the meth issues. So yeah, it's difficult for me to encapsulate in a couple-minute response, to be honest.
Yeah.
What can you say just to community members who aren't getting their calls responded to? I know we saw earlier at Groundwork, there was fewer police officers per population in Winnipeg. I guess what would the message be?
Yeah, maybe I'll defer that to either Deputy Chief Halley or...
As Deputy Chief McKidd said, there are a lot of initiatives that we're undertaking right now to deal with the volume of calls that are sitting in our queue. And as the chief had indicated earlier as well, we are doing a organizational review to determine if we have the resources in the right places. We've also, the city of Winnipeg has recently committed 36 officers to go directly to our front lines to bolster our cruiser car minimums. So we'll have 2 more frontline uniform cruiser cars responding to calls for service in this city. So there's a number of different things that are underway at the moment to address the call volumes, and we do hear it all the time, and it does pain us as police officers when we do receive complaints from the public who we serve, and we spend our entire career serving the people of Winnipeg, and when they're upset with the inability of us to respond when they really need us, because when they call the police, that's the worst day of their lives, and we're not available to attend. We do take that personally, so we will undertake whatever we can to improve our ability to respond.
Do you have a shortage of officers right now? If so, how many?
Oh, you're putting me in a really bad spot. I would always want more officers in our front lines to respond to the calls for service. The chief touched on it when the question, I believe, was actually from yourself in regards to West District. The expansion of that area, I mean, we took a subdivision larger than Brandon and put it in the south end, the southwest quadrant of our city. So we need, obviously, more cruisers, more police officers down in that area. I would like to see more officers on our front lines, whether that comes directly from hiring more officers or through an internal review to direct more officers to the front lines. That needs to be determined. But we are very aware of the situation, and as a Deputy Chief of Operations, of course, I would always want more police officers in uniform in cruiser cars responding to the public's calls for service.
I just asked because I think a colleague just flagged last year, the police service said it was short 80 officers. Is that?
I believe that was interim Chief Art Standard that made that comment, so I'll ask him to come up and address it.
Good to see you all. Thank you for coming today, and I was the interim chief last year, Arthur Stannard. I'm now deputy chief of support. I know you're all waiting for me to talk to you about support services. I'm happy with the crime stats. I know every time they're increase, we're the community's negative and you know, feeling kind of in the darkness. I think we have to celebrate even a small decrease of the crime stats. I really do. I think as a community, we really have to celebrate. And it's not just the Winnipeg Police Service that did it. A whole bunch of partnerships happened, like the chief said. We had great assistance from Manitoba Justice and the province of Manitoba, the Premier, the Justice Minister. We had great support from the Mayor and Council as well. Your question, I asked for 70 more police officers last year. I did that for one reason. Population growth of the city of Winnipeg has enlarged so much that our 28 cars that we have in service right now just doesn't cut it. Council agreed with that and gave us 36 more for 2 more cars. I don't think we're finished. I think we still need 2 more cars, which is 36 more police officers, just to complete our vision of one more car in every division.
36 more.
36 more, yeah, yeah.
What's the, sorry, remind me again, what's the minimum number of cars?
Right now, it's 28, and yeah, it's 7 cars per division. It's offset, of course, by beat officers, by community officers as well. Want to thank everybody, the media plays a very important part as well to get our messages across. And last year when I was acting chief, you really got my message, and I appreciate that very much. Also want to thank, and the chief did as well, our members as well. They go out there every day and they do a job that they really have a passion for and a calling for. It's a frustrating job, and that's just one part of policing. We have a professional staff that are behind them, supporting them, and police officers could not do the job without the professional staff. And let me tell you, professional staff takes their job very seriously as well to serve and protect. One thing I'd like to mention, nobody asked a question about, being part of HR, all these extra people, 51 from the province, 36 more from the city, comes with a cost, and it comes through a cost with HR, with our recruitment, our training, our field trainers, and everybody came together, and we're making it work. We're having double classes now, and we're hoping to achieve our goals of getting more and more people on the street. So thank you for that. One thing that I'm alarmed, being part of support, is assault against peace officers. It's going up every year, and we have to protect our members out there. And we will through tools and through the equipment, but we need the justice system as well, to have consequences for people that assault peace officers. So, thank you for that. Yeah.
I was hoping to ask about the hate movement.
Cam?
You thought you were done.
Thought so. What's the question?
A slight decrease from the previous
Yeah.
year. Was there, I know there was one incident in particular in sort of the Charleswood area that got a lot of attention. Does
Right.
that make up a certain percentage of that? I think it was 44 total? Or
Yeah.
was that treated as just one?
Good question. Dave, do you have a quick answer on that? Was that, the one where there's multiple occurrences with graffiti? Was that counted as one? Do you know? Okay. Let me take that one away and get back to you. I can say this with hate crimes. We're dealing with relatively small numbers, as you've seen. So I wouldn't read too much into the trend there unless it's really exaggerated. I can say that the work that we've done as a service with respect to the issues in the Middle East and the protests that we see here in Winnipeg, resulting from that, we've sort of set a template, to be honest, that's been very well respected across the country. And members from our service, Superintendent Dave Delal and Inspector Jen McKinnon, have been invited to speak in different provinces with respect to how we're handling these protests here. And I think what we've been able to do is sort of keep that pot from boiling over. It's something that we have to manage. It can be very difficult and stressful for the officers when they have to deal with these protests, very contentious. But I think we've done an excellent job communicating with the parties on both sides. We've made a change with our hate crimes reports when they come in. They used to come through the comm center and then get sent to major crimes eventually. We changed that, so now those reports go directly to major crimes, so they get that personal attention from an investigator immediately. So we're taking them very seriously. We're dealing with all involved parties to try to keep that temperature down. And as I said, I think we've done an excellent job at it over the course of last year. It's been a difficult year, but we've sort of set the tone. All right, no, sorry. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah. I should take that away and get back to you. I think let me get back to you on that one. If I could sort of do Deputy Chief Standard here sort of introduced a few items. If I could just take a moment. A few things I wanted to touch on. Again, to echo the comments that have been made here, I think we're happy with seeing things go down. We recognize it's not mission accomplished by any stretch, but this is the direction we want to see. We want to see things going. We want to see these reductions. I just want to talk about, I would attribute at least part of that to the proactive work that our members have been doing, especially when it comes to violent crime. So I just want to give you guys some numbers just off the cuff here. I mentioned our violent offender unit, which is provincially funded, integrated unit with the RCMP. They had 356 arrests in 2024. and they had 700 arrests since their inception, and I believe it was May of 2023. The Violent Crime Retail Theft Initiative, as I said, 981 arrests in a 7-month period. Project Surge, which was another proactive initiative that we did, there were 526 arrests in 2024, and there are another 120 in 2025 so far, so a total of 646 arrests. So this sort of proactive work, as I said, the arrests are one thing, but it's the fact that we're getting these violent repeat offenders, either property or crimes of violence, they're on the radar. We're working with the Crown's office to get conditions put on them that are more strict, and our level of monitoring has gone up. So certainly don't want to take all the credit for the success of these numbers trending downward, but it's things like that. In addition to that, one last comment I'll make is the Manitoba Criminal Intelligence Center, MCIC, a fantastic provincial partner that funds a lot of the work that we do. They fund our JFOs with different Manitoba law enforcement agencies, and that can be anything from a high-level drug project to just recently we had an issue of violent robberies in the city that had a nexus to other jurisdictions in Manitoba. So MCIC funded that investigation, resulted in the arrest of a number of people for some violent robberies. A lot of these things I'm talking about have been highlighted here in different press conferences, and we could certainly link you to those. But I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the things we've done as a service proactively that we hope has had an impact on those top-line numbers that you see coming down.
All right, that concludes our briefing, and I'd just like to thank Winnipeg Chief Gene Bowers and the deputies, Art Standard, Cam McKidd, and Scott Halley, as well as the data analyst, David Bowman, for coming in. Thank you all for coming. Thanks.
Yeah.